She lived in a small, quiet town where everyone knew everyone, and yet, she often felt invisible. Most people passed by without noticing her. She worked hard at her job, waking up early and returning home late. Her days were simple and ordinary, but there was one part of her life that was far from ordinary, her love for music. She had always been drawn to the soft, warm sound of a piano. Even though she never had formal lessons, she spent countless hours at home, learning from books, watching videos, and listening carefully to every note she could find. The piano had become her closest friend, a place where she could escape from the world and express herself in ways words never could. She did not talk about her talent to anyone. Her life was quiet and she liked it that way. Neighbors saw her as a kind but simple woman who kept to herself. She helped when she could, smiled at everyone, and went about her days without drawing attention. She never dreamed of performing on stage or competing with anyone. Music was her private world, a secret joy that she nurtured alone. She practiced diligently, repeating each piece over and over until her fingers could play them without thinking. It was not just about hitting the right notes. It was about feeling every emotion, letting the music tell her story. Her small apartment had a modest piano in the corner, slightly worn from years of use. The keys were not perfect, some sticking slightly, but she loved it anyway. She believed a piano's imperfections did not matter. The soul of the music was far more important. In the evenings, after finishing her work, she would sit down, close her eyes, and let the melodies flow. Sometimes the music was soft and gentle, reflecting her peaceful side. Other times, it was lively and full of energy, showing a part of her that no one knew existed. These moments were hers alone, and they made her feel alive. Outside, life moved quickly. People hurried to their jobs, shops buzzed with activity, and children ran through the streets laughing and playing. She watched it all from her window, feeling a small distance from the world. Yet, she never felt lonely because music kept her company. Every note she played was like a conversation with herself. She learned to be patient, to pay attention to every tiny detail, and to appreciate the beauty in simple things. Every day brought new challenges at work, and every day she faced them with quiet determination. Music became the balance to her life, a reminder that there was more to her than the ordinary routine. She remembered her first encounter with a piano vividly. She was young, maybe 10 or 11, and a neighbor had allowed her to touch the keys. The moment her fingers pressed down, she felt something magical. The sound was not just noise. It felt alive. She could make it soft or loud, happy or sad, and she felt a power she could not explain. From that day on, she was hooked. She spent every free moment listening to piano music and trying to play by copying what she heard. It was not easy, and many times she wanted to give up. The keys felt heavy, her fingers clumsy, and the notes often sounded wrong. But she never stopped. She believed that one day, she would play something beautiful. As she grew older, she worked to support herself, but she never let go of her passion. Each evening, she would return home tired, yet she found energy to sit at her piano. The music lifted her spirit, wiped away the stress of the day, and made her forget any worries. She played not for recognition or praise, but because it filled her heart with happiness. Every melody she learned was a victory, and every mistake was a lesson. She had a quiet confidence in her abilities, a belief that she could achieve something beautiful with patience and dedication. Her love for music also taught her about people. She noticed the smallest things, how someone's smile could change a moment, how kindness could lift spirits. Though she was shy and reserved, she was observant. She listened more than she spoke and understood more than she showed. Music gave her a way to feel emotions deeply, to process the world around her. She often thought that the music she played was a reflection of life itself, sometimes soft, sometimes stormy, but always moving forward. Even in her quiet town, there were moments that tested her courage. People often underestimated her. They thought she was just a simple woman with no remarkable skills. Some joked about her, others ignored her, but she never let it affect her. She knew her own worth and the special gift she carried within her. She practiced not to prove anyone wrong, but to honor the passion that had been with her since childhood. Every note she played was a piece of herself, and she treasured it more than any recognition. The townspeople went about their busy lives, unaware of the quiet woman in their midst. They never imagined that the person they overlooked could have the talent to astonish them one day. She was content with her private world, but deep down, she wondered what it would be like to share her music. The thought of performing in front of others made her nervous, but it also sparked a small excitement. Maybe, just maybe, the world could hear the music that had been living inside her all these years. Her apartment became her sanctuary. Every evening, as the sun set and the city grew quiet, she would sit at her piano, feeling the cool keys beneath her fingers. She remembered the joy she felt as a child, and that feeling never left her. Even on days when work was exhausting or the world felt heavy, music remained her safe place. It reminded her that she had something special, something that could never be taken away. She practiced scales, melodies, and complicated pieces, each one pushing her skills a little further. Sometimes she would play slowly, savoring each note. Other times, she would play quickly, letting her emotions guide her hands. She also learned to create her own music. She experimented with different combinations of notes, finding sounds that made her heart sing. Composing was harder than copying others, but it allowed her to express thoughts and feelings that words could never capture. Her melodies became stories of her life, her struggles, her joys, her dreams. She did not keep these compositions to impress anyone. She kept them to understand herself better. Each new piece she created added to the secret world she cherished, a world where she was free to be exactly who she was. Though her life outside music was simple and often unnoticed, her inner life was full of color and emotion. She dreamed quietly of one day showing the world what she could do, but she also feared disappointment. She worried that people would not understand or appreciate her gift. Yet she never stopped practicing. Every day, she reminded herself that music was not about applause or recognition. It was about passion, love, and truth. Her dedication made her stronger, more patient, and more confident in her abilities. People in the town sometimes saw her walking quietly through the streets, carrying a small bag or returning from work. They noticed her gentle smile, her calm demeanor, but they could never guess the treasure she held within. Few could imagine the hours of practice, the tears of frustration, and the joy of small victories that filled her life. She was humble, kind, and ordinary in their eyes, but extraordinary in ways they could not see. Her talent was a secret, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. As she sat by her piano each night, she would close her eyes and imagine playing for others, sharing her music with people who might be moved by it. She imagined faces lighting up, hearts touched, and souls lifted by the sounds she could create. Though it was only a dream, it gave her hope. She believed that one day, the world would hear her music, and it would change how they saw her. Not as a simple, invisible woman, but as someone with a rare and beautiful gift. Until that day came, she continued her quiet life. She worked, she helped when she could, she smiled, and she practiced. Every evening, she returned to her piano, letting the music carry her away from the ordinary and into the extraordinary. Her talent grew, not because of anyone else, but because of her love, her dedication, and her belief in the power of music. And though the world around her did not yet know it, she was preparing for a moment when her secret gift would shine brighter than anyone could imagine. The town had its fair share of events, small gatherings where people would come together to celebrate or just enjoy time with friends and neighbors. One day, there was an announcement about a local talent showcase. It was nothing huge, just a modest event at the community hall. But for many, it was a chance to show off their skills. Some would sing, others would dance, and a few would play musical instruments. It was meant to be fun, a way for everyone to enjoy each other's company. Yet, for her, it felt like a moment of both opportunity and fear. She had always avoided such gatherings. Performing in front of people had never been her goal. She enjoyed music in the privacy of her apartment, where no one judged her. But something about this event caught her attention. Maybe it was the curiosity, Or maybe it was a quiet longing to see if her music could touch others as it did her. She walked past the community hall several times, watching preparations, listening to laughter and chatter, and wondering if she could ever stand in front of an audience. The thought made her heart race, but she could not ignore it. Word of her interest reached a few neighbors, and they began teasing her. They were not cruel, but their laughter carried a mix of doubt and disbelief. "You? Play in front of everyone?" one neighbor said with a chuckle. "You can't play that well," another added. People joined in, and the room filled with mocking laughter. She felt a sting in her chest. She had always known people might underestimate her, but hearing it aloud made it feel real. She wanted to disappear, to escape from the crowd and the judgment. But she also felt something else, determination. Every hour she had spent practicing, every mistake she had corrected in her quiet room, every piece she had learned, suddenly felt like it had a purpose. She remembered how music had been her refuge, her companion in times of stress and sadness. The piano had listened to her heart, and now, it seemed, it was calling her to share its voice. Despite the mocking words, a spark ignited inside her. She realized that this might be the moment to prove, not to others but to herself, that her music mattered. The days leading up to the event were a mixture of anxiety and preparation. She practiced in her apartment, playing the pieces she loved most, refining each note, and imagining the hall filled with people. The laughter of the neighbors still echoed in her mind, but she tried to push it aside. Music had always been her strength, her comfort, and it could now be her courage. Every evening, as she played, she felt herself growing stronger, more confident. She imagined the piano as an extension of herself, her emotions flowing through every key. The more she played, the more she believed she could do it. On the day of the showcase, she arrived early. The community hall was bustling with people, young and old, preparing for their performances. Some were chatting excitedly, while others were nervous, pacing back and forth. She felt a mix of fear and anticipation. She watched as other performers rehearsed, their movements confident and practiced. She wondered if she would falter, if the mocking words would become real once she stepped onto the stage. But she reminded herself of the hours spent in practice, the love she felt for music, and the calm it brought her. That love was stronger than fear. When it was time for her performance, whispers spread through the hall. People remembered the neighbors' jokes and were curious. Some smiled with doubt, thinking this would be a simple, unremarkable act. A few tried to hide their smirks, certain that she would fail. The woman took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all eyes on her. But she also felt the gentle reassurance of the music inside her. She walked to the piano with careful steps, her heart pounding. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. She sat down, her fingers hovering over the keys. For a moment, she felt the familiar rush of nerves, but she focused on the music. She remembered why she loved it, why she had spent years perfecting it, why it had been her companion through every lonely day. She began to play softly at first, letting the notes fill the hall. The sound was gentle and tentative, like a whisper at first, testing the waters. People leaned forward, surprised by the clarity and emotion in the notes. Even those who had doubted her could not help but listen. As she continued, the music grew stronger, more confident, more expressive. She played each piece with care, letting every emotion shine through. The melody flowed seamlessly from her fingers, telling stories of hope, patience, and quiet strength. The audience could feel it, even if they did not understand the depth of her years of practice. Eyes widened, mouths opened slightly, and a hush fell over the hall. The mocking laughter from before was gone, replaced by silent awe. She felt herself lifted by the music, carried above fear and doubt, into a place of freedom and joy. The performance was not just technical skill. It was heartfelt expression. Every key she pressed seemed to speak her story, her journey, her hidden talent. The audience began to realize that the woman they had underestimated was extraordinary. Each note revealed a depth they had not expected. She had taken the laughter and doubt, the teasing and disbelief, and turned it into something beautiful, something that could not be denied. The hall was filled with the pure magic of music, and it was hers alone to give. By the end of her performance, the hall was silent for a moment, absorbing what had just happened. Then slowly applause began. Not just polite clapping, but real, heartfelt appreciation. People stood, some with tears in their eyes, others shaking their heads in disbelief. They had expected a simple, unremarkable performance, but what they had heard was extraordinary. The humble woman had transformed their doubt into admiration. She did not seek this, but it was a reward for her dedication, patience, and love for music. Afterward, people approached her with respect and wonder. Neighbors who had mocked her now apologized, amazed at what they had witnessed. Children who had laughed now stared in admiration. She smiled quietly, accepting the recognition without arrogance, knowing that the music had done all the talking. Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride and humility. She had faced fear, mockery, and doubt, and had shown her true gift. The piano, her faithful companion, had helped her do it, and in that moment, she knew that no amount of doubt or laughter could ever diminish the power of talent born from passion and love. That night, as she returned home, she felt a sense of calm and fulfillment she had never experienced before. The streets seemed quieter, the stars brighter, and the world more alive. She sat by her piano, playing softly once more, letting the music wash over her. It was not for anyone else now. It was for herself, a celebration of courage, resilience, and the beauty of a dream pursued in silence. She knew that this was just the beginning, that there would be more moments to come, more opportunities to share her gift. And she was ready, stronger than ever, to face whatever came next, with music as her guide. After the first round of teasing and the whisperings of doubt, she spent the next few days reflecting quietly in her apartment. She could have given up, walked away, and returned to her private world of music, where no one would laugh at her. It would have been safe, predictable, and simple, but something inside her stirred. A quiet voice telling her that she had worked too long, loved too deeply, and practiced too many hours to let fear and mockery stop her. She realized that this was more than a chance to perform. It was an opportunity to honor herself and the passion she had nurtured for years. She sat at her piano for hours, running her fingers across the keys, letting the familiar notes calm her racing heart. Each melody she played reminded her why she loved music so much. It was not about praise or recognition, though that thought now brought a gentle curiosity. It was about connection, expression, and truth. Music had always been her companion, the one constant in her life. Now it seemed to whisper that she could take a bold step, that she could show a world that had underestimated her that talent and heart could not be ignored. In the quiet of her apartment, she prepared for the moment she would face the public. She practiced each piece meticulously, imagining every possible challenge. She played slowly, focusing on precision, then allowed her fingers to move faster, trusting instinct and years of experience. She adjusted her posture, her breathing, and even the subtle expressions of her face that conveyed the music's emotion. Every evening, the sound of the piano filled the room, echoing her growing confidence and determination. Her nerves did not disappear. The thought of people watching her, waiting to see her fail, still sent waves of anxiety through her. Yet, she began to understand that fear was not a weakness but a companion, reminding her that what she was about to do mattered. It was a test of courage, not just skill. She realized that her love for music had brought her here, and that same love would carry her through. For the first time, she imagined herself not just as a quiet, unseen woman, but as someone capable of inspiring others, even if only for a moment. The day of her performance arrived, and the air outside seemed heavier with anticipation. She dressed simply, in clothes that made her comfortable but did not draw attention. She wanted the music to speak louder than appearances. The hall was alive with activity, performers preparing, people chatting, and the buzz of expectations mingling with curiosity. She felt the nervous energy in the room, the kind that made the heart race and the palms sweat. But she also felt a steady calm deep inside, a connection to her piano and the countless hours she had spent preparing. Walking toward the stage, she could hear whispers and laughter, some light-hearted, some doubtful. She noticed the glances of neighbors who had mocked her just days before. Their expressions ranged from amusement to skepticism. A few even whispered predictions of failure. Each word, each look, could have been crushing, but she took a deep breath and focused on the sound of the keys that waited for her. This was her moment to step into the light, to take the courage she had been building in private and bring it into the world. When she sat down, the piano felt familiar, welcoming, almost like an old friend greeting her after a long separation. She placed her fingers on the keys and paused, feeling the weight of the moment. The audience waited, their whispers fading as they sensed the beginning of something different. Her first notes were soft, deliberate, each one a quiet introduction. The room seemed to shift, the atmosphere changing from doubt to curiosity. The people who had laughed or whispered now leaned forward, intrigued by the subtle beauty of the sound. She allowed herself to relax, to let the music flow naturally. She did not rush. She did not try to impress. She played with honesty and emotion, letting the melody reflect the countless hours of practice, the quiet strength she had built, and the deep love she carried for music. Every note told a story. Every chord revealed a piece of her soul. The audience began to listen differently, their initial skepticism giving way to awe. The sound filled the hall, wrapping around every person, creating an invisible bond between her and the listeners. As she continued, she gained confidence. The music grew richer, more expressive, and more intricate. Her fingers danced across the keys, not as a display of technical skill alone, but as a storyteller sharing the beauty of a hidden world. The people who had doubted her could no longer ignore the depth of her talent. Their eyes widened, mouths fell slightly open, and an almost tangible silence enveloped the room. They could feel the passion behind every note, the love that had driven her for so many years, and the quiet courage that allowed her to perform despite fear and ridicule. She played with her heart, and it showed. The music was more than sound. It was emotion, it was experience, it was life itself translated into melody. She did not need applause yet. The music was enough. Each person listening felt drawn into the story she was telling. Some moved to tears, others smiling in wonder, all captivated by the raw honesty and beauty of her performance. It was a turning point not just for the audience, but for her as well. She had faced her fear and stepped onto a stage, and in doing so, she had embraced her true self. The climax of her performance came naturally, a crescendo of emotion that seemed to lift the very air in the hall. Her hands moved with confidence and grace, her body swaying slightly with the music's rhythm. She had never felt so alive, so connected to the world beyond her apartment walls. The people watching her were silent in reverence, caught in the spell of a talent that had remained hidden for too long. She realized that her journey, her patience, and her dedication had all led to this moment. A moment where fear was transformed into beauty, doubt into admiration. When the final note rang out and faded, there was a pause heavy with astonishment, as the audience processed what they had just witnessed. Then, applause erupted, spontaneous and full of emotion. People stood, clapping and cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. Neighbors who had mocked her approached, their faces a mix of humility and wonder, offering apologies for their earlier doubt. She smiled quietly, accepting their admiration with grace. But it was not the applause that mattered most. It was the knowledge that she had faced her fear, shared her gift, and remained true to herself. As the hall began to empty, she remained seated for a few moments, letting the experience sink in. The weight of nerves, doubt, and anxiety had lifted, replaced by a sense of fulfillment and peace. She knew that this performance was just the beginning, that the path ahead might still hold challenges and skepticism, but she was ready. She had discovered the courage within herself to step forward, to let her music speak, and to show the world the talent that had always been hers. Returning to her apartment that evening, she sat at her piano once more, playing softly, not for an audience, but for herself. The music flowed naturally, a reflection of the journey she had just taken. She felt pride and humility in equal measure, knowing that the laughter and doubt she had faced had been transformed into something beautiful and meaningful. The piano had always been her companion, and now it had been her voice, her courage, and her bridge to the world outside. She understood, more deeply than ever, that talent nurtured in silence, love, and dedication could not be denied, and that sometimes the greatest gifts shine brightest when the world least expects them. The moment had finally arrived. She sat at the piano in the middle of the community hall, the polished wood reflecting the soft lights above. Her fingers hovered above the keys, a mixture of anticipation and calm running through her. The audience waited quietly, curious and skeptical, unsure what to expect from the humble woman who had drawn so much attention and whispers in the days before. Some still smiled with doubt, expecting a simple, unpolished performance. But she had learned long ago that music was not about meeting others' expectations. It was about expressing what lived inside her. The first note was soft, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters. The hall fell silent, and all eyes turned toward her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memory of countless practice hours fill her mind. The sound of the piano became an extension of herself, a way to speak without words. As she continued, the notes grew stronger, smoother, flowing from her fingers with a natural grace that only years of dedication could produce. The people in the audience leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected depth and emotion. She did not play to impress. She played to express, to connect, to tell the story that had been living in her heart for so long. Each note carried a piece of her journey, the quiet afternoons of practice, the late nights alone, the moments of doubt, and the steady love she had for the piano. The music was alive, moving through the hall, wrapping around each listener, and drawing them into her world. She felt herself transported, no longer thinking about the audience or their judgment, but entirely present in the flow of sound and emotion. The melody shifted, becoming more complex and dynamic. Her fingers danced across the keys, moving with confidence and precision. The audience could not help but notice the skill and care in every movement. The notes rose and fell like waves, expressing joy, longing, hope, and resilience. Even those who had doubted her now sat in stunned silence, unable to look away or resist the pull of her music. She had transformed fear and hesitation into beauty, and it showed in every chord, every pause, every flourish. She felt a thrill as the music grew bolder, her hands moving faster, yet every note precise and deliberate. She imagined the sounds as a conversation with the room, a gentle sharing of her deepest self. The audience was no longer just watching. They were listening, feeling, living with her through each melody. Eyes widened, breaths caught, and a hush fell over the hall, replacing the whispers of doubt that had filled the space just moments before. The piano was not simply an instrument. It was a bridge between her heart and theirs. There were moments of softness, where the music slowed, gentle notes echoing with emotion and vulnerability. She allowed herself to feel the power of the performance, letting the piano carry her fears, her hopes, and her passion. The audience responded without words, sensing the authenticity of what they were hearing. Some leaned forward, captivated. Others closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. She could feel their attention, but it did not weigh her down. It lifted her, inspiring her to pour even more of herself into the music. As the performance progressed, she allowed herself to move with the rhythm. A subtle sway, a graceful lift of the hands, all natural extensions of the emotion behind each note. She was not performing for approval. She was performing because it was part of her, part of the life she had quietly nurtured. Her music told stories without saying a word, stories of struggle, perseverance, and hope. Each chord resonated deeply, creating a powerful connection that transcended any doubt or disbelief. The climax approached, a crescendo that built slowly yet irresistibly. Her fingers flew across the keys, precise, confident, and expressive. The room was completely silent, everyone drawn into the spell of her music. It was a moment of pure magic, a culmination of years of dedication and love for the piano. She played not just with skill, but with her whole being. The audience could feel it, the courage, the passion, and the beauty of someone who had overcome fear to share their gift. The once mocking faces now reflected awe, wonder, and respect. When the final note faded into silence, the room seemed suspended in time. For a moment, there was nothing but the echo of the last chord and the realization of what had just happened. The applause that followed was spontaneous, heartfelt, and overwhelming. People stood, clapped, cheered, and some even wiped tears from their eyes. The woman had taken the laughter, doubt, and skepticism that had met her in the past days and transformed it into a performance that no one could forget. She had shown her true gift, and it had touched everyone in the room. Neighbors who had mocked her approached, their faces a mixture of humility and amazement. They offered quiet apologies, still processing the depth of talent they had dismissed. Children stared in wonder, whispering to their parents about how incredible she had been. She accepted the praise with a gentle smile, grateful but not boastful. The music had spoken for her, and she knew that no words could capture the feeling that had been shared between her and the audience. After the performance, she returned to her apartment, her heart full but calm. She sat at her piano once more, playing softly, letting the notes flow naturally. This time, she played for herself alone, celebrating the courage it had taken to step into the world and share her gift. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the quiet afternoons of practice, the moments of doubt, and the unwavering love for music that had never let her give up. She realized that the experience had changed her, strengthened her, and shown her the power of dedication and authenticity. In the days that followed, the performance became a topic of conversation throughout the town. People who had once doubted her now shared stories of her incredible talent. She received invitations to play at other gatherings, small celebrations, and even local schools. Yet, she remained humble, understanding that her music was not about fame or recognition, but about connection, expression, and truth. She continued to play for herself, for the joy it brought, and for the moments when her music could touch the hearts of others. Through it all, she remained the quiet, kind woman the town had always known. But now, there was a new awareness, a recognition of the extraordinary talent that had always been present but unseen. She had transformed fear into courage, doubt into beauty, and solitude into a shared experience. The piano had always been her companion, but now it was also her voice, a bridge between her heart and the world around her. She understood that the true power of music lay not in the applause or recognition, but in the ability to touch lives, to inspire, and to reveal the depth of the human spirit. That evening, as she played in the quiet of her apartment, she felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. The journey had not been easy, and the fear and doubt had been real, but she had faced them and emerged stronger. She had shown the world a part of herself that had been hidden for so long, and in doing so, she had also discovered a new depth of confidence and self-respect. The music flowed through her, a living testament to patience, dedication, and love, and she knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to grow, inspire, and shine. After her remarkable performance, the community hall remained abuzz with excitement. People could not stop talking about the humble woman who had amazed them all. Her music had captured something deep inside everyone who listened. The whispers of doubt and laughter had vanished, replaced by admiration and curiosity. Neighbors and townspeople began to look at her differently, seeing not just the quiet woman they had known, but someone with extraordinary talent and heart. In the days that followed, she received unexpected attention. Invitations came for her to perform at local events, schools, and small gatherings. She was surprised by the interest, not because she doubted her own ability, but because she had never sought recognition. Music had always been her private world, a sanctuary she cherished alone. Yet, she realized that sharing her gift brought joy not only to others but to herself as well. The thought that her music could touch lives in ways words could not was both humbling and exciting. People who had once mocked her approached her with respect. Some apologized quietly, Others expressed amazement at the skill and emotion she had displayed. Children whispered to their parents about how incredible she was, their eyes shining with wonder. Even strangers from nearby towns who had heard of her performance sought to see her play. She was careful to remain humble, smiling gently, never boasting or exaggerating her accomplishments. She understood that her talent was a gift meant to be shared, not flaunted. Her days began to change subtly. She continued with her regular work, helping and interacting with people in the community, as she always had. But now there was a new awareness of who she was. People treated her with a mix of admiration and curiosity, asking her about her music, her practice, and how she had developed such skill. She answered simply, sharing a little about her dedication and love for the piano, never making it seem like something magical or unattainable. She wanted people to understand that talent comes from patience, practice, and genuine passion. In her apartment, she spent long hours at the piano, exploring new melodies, creating compositions that reflected her life, her dreams, and her emotions. The applause and recognition outside were gratifying, but the true satisfaction came from the music itself. Every note she played was a story, a feeling, a reflection of her journey. She felt a deep connection to her instrument, as if the piano could understand her in ways no person ever could. And in sharing her music with the world, she found a new purpose and a renewed sense of joy. She also noticed the impact her music had on others. People would come to listen quietly, sometimes moved to tears, sometimes smiling, always captivated. Her performances became moments of connection, bridging differences and bringing comfort, inspiration, and happiness. She had always believed in the power of music to heal and uplift, and now she saw it in action. The audience's reactions were not about admiration for her alone, but about the shared human experience that music created. Even in her quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come. She had faced fear, doubt, and ridicule, yet she had persisted, guided by love and passion. The mocking words of the past seemed distant now, like shadows that could no longer reach her. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. Her journey had taught her resilience, humility, and the beauty of pursuing a dream quietly and sincerely. Her community began to see her as an example, someone who had quietly worked on her passion and achieved something extraordinary. Parents encouraged their children to pursue their interests with dedication, using her story as inspiration. Friends spoke about the value of persistence and humility. Even the children in town learned that appearances could be misleading, that quiet people often carried remarkable talents and stories within them. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. She continued her simple routines, enjoying the ordinary moments of life, the morning light streaming through her window, the sound of birds outside, the quiet streets of her town. Music remained her anchor, her way to process the world and express her deepest feelings. She was no longer invisible, but she had not changed who she was at her core. Humility, patience, and kindness still guided her actions and decisions. Her confidence in her music grew, not from the applause, but from the understanding that she had faced a challenge, shared her gift, and touched others. She began to experiment more, composing new pieces that blended emotion, technique, and storytelling. Each new composition was a reflection of her growth, her experiences, and her vision. She understood that music was a lifelong journey, with endless opportunities to explore, learn, and inspire. Over time, her performances became more frequent, yet she always maintained the simplicity and honesty that had defined her music from the beginning. She never played for fame or recognition, but for the joy of creation and the connection it brought. Each audience, no matter how small, experienced the authenticity of her talent. She had learned that the true impact of her music was not in accolades or praise, but in the way it touched hearts and brought people together. Her story spread quietly, inspiring others to pursue their own passions with dedication and humility. People realized that talent does not always announce itself loudly, and that extraordinary gifts can reside in the most unassuming individuals. She became a symbol of perseverance, patience, and the quiet power of passion. Her journey demonstrated that true talent, nurtured with love and dedication, could not remain hidden forever. Even as her life became richer with music and recognition, she continued to find joy in the ordinary. She cherished the balance between her quiet private world and the growing opportunities to share her gift. Every performance was a reminder of how far she had come and the beauty of the journey she had undertaken. She had turned mockery into admiration, fear into courage, and solitude into a shared human experience through music. Through it all, she remained herself, humble, kind, and devoted to the art she loved. She had proven not only her talent but also the power of persistence and the importance of believing in oneself. Her journey showed that even in the face of doubt and ridicule, dedication and love for what you do could lead to extraordinary achievements. And as she continued to play, she knew that her music would keep inspiring, comforting, and connecting people for years to come, carrying her message of hope, passion, and quiet strength. Time passed, and her life slowly transformed in ways she had never imagined. The quiet woman who had once been overlooked in her small town was now recognized as someone with extraordinary talent. But even as invitations, compliments, and admiration came her way, she remained grounded, continuing to live simply and appreciating the small joys in everyday life. She understood that recognition was fleeting, but the music, her passion, and the connection it created were enduring. She continued to practice diligently every day, not for others, but for herself and for the music. Her compositions became richer, deeper, and more expressive. She explored new styles, experimented with melodies, and allowed her emotions to guide her creativity. Each piece she played was an honest reflection of her journey, her struggles, her triumphs, and her inner world. She knew that music was a lifelong journey, with endless opportunities to grow, learn, and inspire. Her performances, though now more frequent, remained humble. She played at local events, community gatherings, and small celebrations. Each audience experienced the sincerity and authenticity of her talent. People were captivated not just by her skill, but by the depth of feeling in her music. They could sense the years of practice, the patience, and the love that had nurtured her gift. Her music became a bridge, connecting people of all ages and backgrounds, allowing them to share in the beauty and emotion she expressed. The impact of her music extended beyond her performances. People who had witnessed her play spoke about her talent and her journey, inspiring others to pursue their own passions with dedication and humility. Parents encouraged their children to explore their interests, emphasizing the value of perseverance and quiet determination. Friends and neighbors reflected on the lesson that appearances could be deceiving, and that extraordinary abilities often lie hidden in unassuming individuals. She became a symbol of hope and inspiration, proving that dedication and love for what you do could overcome doubt and ridicule. Despite the attention, she remained herself. She continued to wake up early, help others in small ways, and enjoy the simple pleasures of life. She walked through the streets of her town, sometimes smiling at familiar faces, sometimes lost in thought, always carrying the quiet strength she had developed over the years. Music was still her anchor, her sanctuary, and her way of expressing the deepest parts of herself. Every note she played was a story, a reflection of her life, and a gift to those who listened. Her story reached beyond her town as well. People from nearby communities came to hear her play, drawn by the tales of her extraordinary talent and humble nature. Some came expecting a performance, others seeking inspiration. They all left touched by the sincerity and passion that radiated from her music. She understood that her talent was not just for entertainment. It was a way to connect, to inspire, and to remind people of the beauty that could be found in dedication, humility, and love. In quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the days of solitude, the hours spent practicing, and the fear she had felt before her first public performance. She thought of the laughter, the doubt, and the skepticism that had met her, and she realized that those experiences had shaped her. They had strengthened her resolve, honed her skill, and deepened her appreciation for music. She understood that every challenge she had faced was part of the journey that had led her to this place of recognition and fulfillment. Her life became a balance of ordinary routines and extraordinary experiences. She continued to find joy in the simplicity of daily life, the morning light, the gentle sounds of the town, the quiet moments at her piano. But now, she also experienced the excitement of sharing her talent, touching hearts, and inspiring others. Each performance was a reminder of the courage it had taken to step into the world, and the reward of pursuing a passion with sincerity and love. She also began mentoring others who shared her love for music. Young people who showed promise sought her guidance, and she welcomed them with patience and kindness. She taught not just technical skill, but the importance of dedication, humility, and emotional expression. She encouraged them to find their own voice, to embrace their journey, and to understand that talent flourishes through love, practice, and perseverance. Her influence grew quietly, leaving a lasting legacy in the lives of those she touched. Through it all, she remained humble. She did not seek fame, wealth, or accolades. Her joy came from the music itself, from the connection it created, and from the knowledge that she had faced fear and doubt with courage and grace. She understood that her gift was a responsibility as well as a blessing, a way to enrich the world and inspire others to embrace their passions. In her quiet apartment, she played late into the night, letting the music flow naturally, a reflection of her thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Each melody carried the story of her journey, the struggles, the triumphs, the doubts, and the victories. She knew that music had the power to heal, inspire, and connect, and she felt privileged to share that power with the world. Her piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a voice for the deepest parts of her soul. Her life became an example of what could be achieved through patience, dedication, and love. She showed that even the quietest voices could be powerful, that hidden talents could shine when given the chance, and that humility and perseverance were as important as skill. People who knew her story learned to look beyond appearances, to value effort over recognition, and to appreciate the beauty in dedication and passion. Years passed, and she continued to play, create, and inspire. She remained a humble, kind woman, living simply but impacting the lives of many. Her music was a testament to the power of persistence, courage, and love for what you do. She had turned fear into confidence, doubt into admiration, and solitude into a shared experience of beauty and emotion. Her talent, once hidden, now shone brightly, leaving a lasting impression on all who heard it. In the end, she understood that her journey was not just about music, but about life itself. It was about finding courage in the face of doubt, remaining humble in the midst of recognition, and embracing passion with sincerity and dedication. Her story became a source of inspiration for her community and beyond, a reminder that even ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they follow their hearts. And as she continued to play, she knew that her music would keep touching lives, inspiring hope, and celebrating the quiet power of talent nurtured with love and perseverance.